Today's video, we're going to be checking out the new released DC Collectibles DC Icons Set 29. This is Superman vs. Doomsday. Let's take our initial dimensions for these figures before we look at anything further. Superman stands a little over 6 inches in height, while the very towering Doomsday stands closer to 7 inches in height. The set comes with a really neat looking display base in which you can either stand the figures on, or you can be a little bit more creative with some of the things that you can add to it, because DC Icons, at least this set, gives you a lot that you can mix and match and customize the space to whatever you want. Currently you can see that there's 6 holes, 3 at the bottom, 3 at the top, 6 holes in total, and then from there you can change out and do whatever you want with it. First and foremost, of course, the very classic ripped Superman cape, making a makeshift flag that we would see in issue 75, both in the newsstand release. I guess the newsstand release was the one that had the flag cover like this, and then it was the collector's edition that came in the black bag. Really nice detailing there on the torn cape as it's being draped across this stick sort of thing that's being, again, planted into the ground, and then the cape is just kind of blowing in the wind. Again, just before we plug that into the display base, the Superman emblem looks quite good, only on the one side, and several different tears on the other. Defaulted, I would normally have put the stand up here, but just so that you know, or the flag up there, but just so you know, the holes are the exact same size on all of these. So I mean, really, if you want to have, for example, the flag down here, you could certainly do that, but I would probably just have it displayed up at the top here. Then it leaves you with 5 extra holes. Now, what can you do with those 5 extra holes? Well, for starters, if you want to just display your figures on them, DC Collectibles gives you a whole bunch of these little individual pegs. I think there's about 4 in total. And you can plug them in any one of those slots, just kind of slide it into place like so. And then you can take the supplied peg hole on the undersides of Superman's feet and Doomsday's feet, and you can plug the figure in. My only one little nitpick I could make about it is that the pegs go too far down. They sit too far, too low into the base itself. So even taking like a character like Superman, plugging them in, you can see very little of it, about, I would say, greater than a half of it is sticking out from the ground that actually makes contact with the hole. That being the hole on the undersides of his foot. The pegs sit loose, which I guess is good because then you can remove them, but I don't think that they should sit as low down as they do, because ultimately what it ends up meaning is it's hard to really peg Superman's foot, Doomsday's foot as well, but it's hard to peg their feet into those pegs when so very little of the peg is actually visible. What you can also do too is you can take this clear post, which is also included with this set, and this is kind of neat. They include these 2 cardboard cutouts. One says "Badam" and the other one says "Crack-a-tomb." Yes, 90s comics. Simply just take the one end of the clear post that has, hopefully you can see it, a little slot on the top there, and either one of the cardboard displays just kind of fit into that, and then you can peg that same sort of clear post anywhere that you want in those respected 5 holes. So for example, if you plug it there, you could have Superman on the one side, Doomsday on the other, and you could have the sound effect as they're making contact with one another. And just to also show you how that works, we'll just pop that out, switch it out with "Badam." That's how it looks on the display base. Oh wait, there's more. Sound like an infomercial. What you can also do too is they give you well, let's count them off here. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 different pieces of rubble, all of which have peg holes on the undersides, and you can simply then mix and match. You can either plug them in by taking the pegs that they include, just fit that underneath like so, and then you can just fit it anywhere that you want on the display base. Kind of gives a little extra bit of depth to it, but it runs into the same problem as the figures themselves. The pegs sit too far down, so a lot of times the rocks just feel like they're sitting really loose in the base. But again, you can like just mix and match, either sitting them loose or you can peg them into place, and you can mix and match until you get the one that the desired effect. Let's have a look at these stones. Don't worry, we won't spend a lot of time on the stones, but a couple of different variations of shapes, jagged, and again, you've got a couple of those little smoother pieces, little smaller pieces here, and all of them have the peg holes on the undersides. I'm surprised actually you get as many as you do. It seems like maybe throw in 2, maybe throw in 3, but to throw in what, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, that's a lot of individual stones that you can plug into place. And unfortunately, you can't really plug them on top of one another, I guess because you would have glaring holes on the top. So you could kind of just stack them on top of one another until, again, you get the look that you're really looking to get. So that is your display base. Not really much more to be said about that. By the way, as well, you also get yourself an instruction guide kind of illustrating all the stuff that I just mentioned about how all the stones plug into place, how the flag can plug into the top, or again, anywhere, and how you can use the cardboard wording there as well. Then we have a look at the figures themselves, and actually we could spend some time talking about the other accessories as well. Some other accessories, of which Doomsday, for example, comes with a closed fist that can either be making contact with the Man of Steel, or what you can also do too is they include the torn flag, the torn cape. See, now I'm calling it a flag. The torn cape from the Man of Steel. And there's little looplets at the top there that you can fit in between Doomsday's knuckle blades. And the one here is a little on the harder side to get on there, but you can get him to hold it. It just doesn't sit all that well. In fact, it sits really loose, I've noticed. Try as I might, you can get it as far in as you can. And there we go. Completely in place. This is a great look if you're not going to have the two combatants, in battle with one another. The same similar S, of course, as one would expect, to the flag, the makeshift flag for the Superman's fallen state. But I really, again, like the look that you can incorporate this with Doomsday. The multiverse, the DC multiverse from Mattel, also did a very similar thing with the regular Doomsday, although theirs was just a makeshift fabric. Here, at least, we get sculpted plastic, so again, it's got a little bit more defined sculpture to it, as opposed to it just simply being like a draping piece of fabric. Also, to go along with that, if you enjoyed so much of Doomsday's fists like that, he does also come with a second one. He gets 2 of these that you can display him with it if you don't prefer to have him wearing the gripping, I'm going to grab you and maul you sort of hands. And just to show you how that works, we'll go ahead and unplug the hand. It's very, very easy actually to take out of the socket. Replace it with the hand that you want. And just plug that into place. And now you've got Doomsday with the punching fist. Don't worry, Superman gets his fair share of accessories as well. He comes with actually a couple of neat ones, one of which being the heat ray vision, or the heat vision that he has. And it plugs, there's little extra fibers there, it plugs just into his head. It's actually just more frictioned than anything else. You can even see where like the defined areas of his eyeballs are. So when you're plugging into place, you're really just forcing it against there until you've got Superman with his heat vision. So that's a really neat look. And I like that it's translucent plastic. Really looks cool. I also really like how it's got these little ripples in it, as if it's actually pulsating or projecting further blasts. Like he's increasing the intensity of the heat blast. Really do think that looks neat. I also like that they didn't forfeit having holes in his eyes just to accomplish this look, which is something that a company would have likely done years ago if they wanted to. I don't know why I have all these little fibers here. Why? That's probably what they would have done back then. They would have just put holes in his eyes and then just simply plug those into place. Friction and sculpting the internal to match the face is a better way to go, and at least it doesn't damage the face sculpt at all. Furthermore, Superman also comes with this punching blast. You simply just line up the fist like so and just kind of force it in there, being mindful the whole time you're doing this. You want to actually kind of, there's a thumb right there, so you can kind of see which way it goes. And let's see if oh, it's this one here on this side here. I was going to say, be mindful though when you're plugging it into place that you don't accidentally pinch or pressure around the outer points of this exploding star effect, because any one of these are very fragile in plastic. Last thing you would want to do is actually accidentally break that. So that's really a neat look too, that you can have Superman making contact with Doomsday, you know, just hauling off and putting all his effort and strength into that one final blow. Go ahead and take that off. And I guess rounding out the rest of his accessories, as Superman does have a little bit more, he has also the Fallen Superman. Bruised, battered, and clawed. He has the interchangeable head if you want to if you want to switch it out to this instead. I personally like the more angry on his feet Superman, but if you want a preferred look of him fallen down and now bruised and battered, you could have, if you had a, you could have her kind of crying over top of his fallen body. But that is a really neat looking head sculpt. Even if that's not a head sculpt I would end up using, I still like the fact that you would get two of them here. Alright, so there's your accessories, there's your display base. We spent a lot of time just actually going through all that. Let's have a look at the figures themselves. Now the figures are the same, proportionately the same size as other DC Icon figures, of course, Doomsday being a little bit bigger in stature. But Superman looks quite good, if not for the fact that he's just torn apart. See that he's got even blood on the shoulder area here, but even his top area of his outfit is completely torn away, showing just a little bit of the Superman emblem and showing a whole lot of a hairy-chested Superman. The hair also carries over to his arms, not that I feel the need to point that all out, and you've got sculpted, ripped outfit on the back there. The lower half is just basically Superman, just shy of the fact that he's got the rip in the one thigh. Other than that, it's just a regular Superman figure. I really don't know why, but this one area of red here is a different color than this red. I'm actually even more surprised that they didn't just simply paint this blue. Paint the blue all the way up into the underoos and leave this part red. I don't know why they would have painted this part here red as well. But they have, and for some strange reason, this is a darker shade of red than this red here, and it's a heck of a lot darker than the lower area of his underoos. The feet are a nice sculpt, no real complaints there. Peg hole on one foot, not on the other, just on the one foot. And again, there's this head sculpt, really nice looking head sculpt for an angrier Superman. Posability on this guy has the ball joint in the head, universal joints on the arms, and through the process of that, you'll unplug that. That happens a lot actually on this particular figure, I've noticed, as it just is a swivel peg. Double hinge on the elbow, a hinge on the hand that rotates all the way around, upper torso ball joint, lower torso crunch, and then he's got the ball joint legs. Now, like other Icon figures, you can just drop the legs a little lower, and it gives you a little extra room for Superman to move his legs. And then you just pop those back into the sockets when you're done. Double hinge on the knee, and then he's got the hinge on the foot, and he gets your ankle pivot as well. So there's Superman. Not a bad looking figure. Overall, pretty happy with him. Let's get him to properly stand. There we go. And let's have a look at Doomsday. I'm really excited the fact that we got a Doomsday DC Icons figure, and overall I'm pretty impressed with how he came across and ended up being delivered here. I will say I was initially bothered by the fact that his hair is such a different color than the spikes that make up the outer area of his face. The longer I look at it, the longer I hold the figure, I find it doesn't bother me as much, but some may be bothered by the fact that his hair does seem slightly too blue. Too blue, baby, I love you, as opposed to the white making up the majority of his body, armor, you know, all little spikes coming out of his body. Face sculpt is good, passable, and quite acceptable for a Doomsday face. I don't know if you can see it, but his eyes are actually in there underneath the bars of bone that cover over top of his eyes. They've added just a slight bit of kind of dirtied paint, just added to the bones, so it doesn't look as super pristine white, which I think I'm perfectly fine with. They've also sculpted in the tongue and painted that as well. One thing that this figure does not lack in is paint, despite the fact that the figure really is just mostly this gray, white, and he's got the green in the trunks. Speaking of the trunks, don't know if you can see it, but they've even got the little teared areas in which his containment suit was ripped off. And then you've got the remains of it just draping over top of this tubular belt that he is wearing. Down below, we've got some of that silver that carries over from here down to here. Some silver down at the lower area of the shorts. Looks quite good. And again, texturing on the boots done quite nicely, even right down to the fact that they sculpted the undersoles of the feet. Yes, you will notice as well, one peg hole. Not sure why they didn't do two. They ended up going just with the one. Just with the one. About the only thing I would say is one thing I don't like so much about the figure is about the same thing that I find generally a problem with big, bulky figures. Doomsday here, for example, is super articulated, but he is very cumbersome in the arm area. Just by the nature of the way he's got broad forearms, a broad bicep, and a broad shoulder, really makes for very little articulation in the actual joints. You can see that there's a big gap there where the joint hinges, but it doesn't really give you much in the way of a bend. That's it. You missed it? There you go. So there's really not a whole lot that you can do with the arms. You can still get him obviously mauling the Man of Steel, but you don't really have as much the flexibility that, say, Superman has over here. There's the back of the figure. Again, really nice proportions for him. I'm trying to think actually what they could use this same body for. Ultimately, they could even just re-release this guy with a containment suit, and I would probably pick him up as well. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this particular figure. I'm really actually overall happy with both figures, but I really liked the Doomsday. I liked how he turned out. He might actually be my favorite of the two. I know I would be more gravitating towards a Man of Steel, you know, towards Superman anyways, but you don't get a lot of Doomsdays, and when Doomsdays do come around, they're hit or miss. I think this is actually more a hit than I would say a miss. Let's have a look at his posability. His head is on that same ball joint as Superman, just a little bit bigger, of course. Universal joints on the arms. They rotate all the way around. They hinge out, but not really by much. That's about it. By the nature of the way that the spikes are on his shoulder, it ultimately just means that it limits how far out he can move his shoulder. I guess that's a pretty acceptable reach that the arms can move outward. And then again, you've got the full rotation happening there as well. A swivel on the bicep. Here we go, talking about that hinge once again. Not much in the way of the hinge. That's about all you're going to be getting. Swivel also in the wrists and the hinge back and forth. Again, really liking the closed fists. Oh, look at that. That looks awesome. He has the upper torso ball joint, a lower torso crunch, which just happens to be really, really stiff on this figure. And much like Superman, he's got the ball joints in the legs, and you've also got the drop downs. The drop downs, which allows a little bit extra motion in there as well. Just bring him up when you're done. And he's got a swivel right above that silver band that goes around his trunks. Double hinge on the knee. And then you've got a hinge on the foot. Everything on this guy, especially in the knee area, I find is really screechy. Everything makes noise. I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing as opposed to having a very loose figure. Ultimately just dropped the fist. We'll just replace it with a regular grabbing hand. Yes, indeed, overall, both figures are done quite well here. The DC Icons Superman versus Doomsday is overall a pretty good looking set. It does have a few shortcomings, yes. Primarily, most of those shortcomings I find fall within the display base. The display base, for example, has peg holes where the pegs sit too far down and doesn't give enough clearance for the figures to stand properly on them. The accessories are a nice touch. I feel like they went a little crazy on all the extra stones, but again, that's great for customizers out there for how they want to display their base. Maybe some would favor a little bit more rubble than others, so at least the options are available there. Regarding the individual figures, I think both figures are good. I think Doomsday might be my favorite of the two because Superman we already have. We have a tattered Superman in this instance, yes, but it's nice to get a Doomsday, especially in the same scale as the other DC Icons figures. So overall, it's a great looking set. The hardest part is probably just trying to find, like I'm doing here, trying to find a good way to display them where you have both Titans basically going at blows with one another. Ultimately, I kind of cheated and I used the little cardboard display stand for ultimately how I could get Superman to kind of hover or leap down on Doomsday for that final kill shot. But I do think, again, it's a great looking set. Mileage may vary for how you can actually display these guys properly, but overall, I think, again, the set's worth picking up if you guys can find it, especially if you're fans of the original Death of the Superman storyline. Today, once again, we're having a look at the DC Collectibles, DC Icons. This was Superman vs. Doomsday. A great overall set. Overall, yeah, I would say a good set. If you guys haven't had a chance yet to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do that, as you'll never miss a beat then with future videos coming onto this channel. If you guys also want to go back and have a look at some of my previous DC Icons figure reviews, I'll have a playlist on this channel that you can go back and watch those older videos at your viewing pleasure. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you next time.